and that these are biological and instinctual drives. Things like, uh, you know, how you react on a ledge and how you automatically know to kind of skirt away from the edge. Survival kind of techniques, things that don't go through our processing and that we do automatically. He said that oftentimes our behaviors and our emotions were, like I said before, deterministic. We did not have control over them. This will be one of the main things that a lot of other people have an issue with going forward. Particularly, Freud paid attention to the first 6 years of human development, ages 0 through 6. Again, these start to play out into his psychosexual stages. I don't know if you've reviewed in the text, but we'll kind of go over that briefly. He talks about libido, one's sexual energy. Oftentimes, again, this is rooted in these unconscious motivators, if you will, and how we use this libido to kind of go about our days, and how we are constantly kind of following this sexual energy, and this is determining what we do with our behavior and consequently our thoughts thereafter. He talks about life instincts and how we use them to grow and to survive. He said one of the main purposes in life is to gain pleasure and avoid pain. I mean, it sounds basic, but it is kind of the beginning of what may motivate us. To gain pleasure and to avoid pain. I mean, I think we can all agree that in most circumstances in life we do these things. He was also interested in something called death instincts, this aggressiveness within ourselves, that we need to kind of manage our awareness of death, and that this awareness of death oftentimes is kind of lingering and does have an effect on us in our days. Obviously, the personality concepts of Freud are well documented, and you may have come across it in the past. Concepts such as the id, the ego, and the superego. He kind of described these as three kind of separate pieces within your mind that kind of compose your overall ego, and how sometimes they're kind of battling each other. And oftentimes this battling of each other will cause some sort of anxiety and maybe at the root of some of your problems or issues. I'm going to talk about, by the way, how all this is going to relate to how we practice psychoanalysis. But first, I just want to touch the main points of psychoanalysis. As I said before, these three parts of the personality, the id, this is your biological foundation. This is your instilled from birth. These are your drives. These are your instincts. He refers to it as the spoiled brat of the three egos. It lacks organization. It's blind. It's amoral. Sometimes it's illogical, and it's simply just to gain pleasure and avoid pain. These are, again, those instincts. This is your id. This is what drives you automatically. The ego, the second, the middle ground, if you will, is the psychological or the executive branch of your personality. The traffic cop. It kind of mediates between the superego, which I'll talk about, and the id. This is the balance, if you will. This is where reality kind of takes place. This is where you plan. This is where you kind of make sense of things. On the opposite end of the spectrum from the id is the superego. The superego is kind of this social component, the bigger piece, the environment, if you will. We're looking back into New York City, and how that influences one. This is the judicial branch of the personality. This is where we get our moral codes from. This is where we learn what is good and what is bad. You know, because if you really think about it, good and bad are just kind of something that we created in our societies and in our cultures. And this is coming in. This is we're processing this, and this has become a part of our personality. So once again, we have the id and the superego, and somewhere in the middle we kind of balance out into our ego. This is important because oftentimes we may want what our id wants, and our super ego might be telling us a complete other thing. I want this, but it's wrong. Kind of play out in our minds, and it's kind of up to our ego, the center of ground, to kind of make a decision and kind of go forward. And also, more importantly than make a decision, is kind of come to some sort of catharsis, some sort of understanding that, like, yes, I want this, but at the same time it breaks moral codes, or it's completely illegal, or it won't help us in some way. So he uses these three parts of the personality to talk about how we need to balance these things. Once again, all these things are not going on consciously. These are going on in our unconscious minds, but then the way we study our unconscious minds is through our behavior, through the things that we do and the way that we act and the things that we say and how we say them. Psychoanalysts are really concerned with observing behavior to try to figure out what's going on in the unconscious mind. So obviously we know that Freud is big on dreams. He's a big analyst of dreams. He kind of looks at the symbolism and tries to figure out what they mean. He thinks that there's maybe desires or some sort of codes within the dreams, and there's a number of ways that we can look at that. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if you've ever read one of those dream analysis books, but I think they're kind of hokey. But that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. And I'm sure there's some sort of value in the analysis of dreams, but I don't know if there's any certain written manual, like if you dream of an elephant, that it means this. But that's the kind of thing that Freud was beginning to look at. And remember, again, this is 1900, so everything was open. Everything was a wide open book at this point. There was the possibility that maybe he could write a manual where an elephant means this for everybody. So he was beginning to explore these kind of concepts. You've heard of the expression, perhaps, of Freudian slips. Slips are where you say things that you don't necessarily mean to say, but he actually says, yes, you do mean to say them. They were part of your unconscious. It's something that wanted to get out. These are the slips of the tongue. Sometimes when you slip, it shows that it's on your mind and that you were thinking about it all along. He was into post-hypnotic suggestions. Remember, these kind of things at the time were very new and very interesting to the bourgeois class. To sit down on a couch and take part in talk therapy, where someone would try to hypnotize you. That was something that was really radical during those time periods in Vienna. And he really explored that, the ideas of hypnosis and what could be said during hypnosis and what could be suggested after hypnosis, and also studied them to determine whether or not they were effective.